All right, welcome everyone to today's episode of Shannon Reads 1099 Instructions. I am going today I'm going to talk about the 1099 miscellaneous and just read the beginning of the instructions for those because there's a lot of important information in there and I don't want to leave it out. All right, so for the 2021 instructions for Form 1099 miscellaneous and 1099 NEC, what's new? Form 1099 miscellaneous title change. The title of Forms 1099 miscellaneous has been changed from miscellaneous income to miscellaneous information. Form 1099 miscellaneous box 11 includes any reporting under section 6050R regarding cash payments for the purchase of fish or resale purposes from an individual or corporation who is engaged in catching fish. For further information, see the instructions for box 11 later. Form 1099 NEC box 1 will not be used for reporting under section 6050R regarding cash payments for the purchase of fish or resale purposes. And as I just read, that's now going to be reported in box 11. In the 1099 NEC box 2, payers may use either box 2 on Form 1099 NEC or box 7 on Form 1099 miscellaneous to report any sales totaling $5,000 or more of consumer products for resale or buy-sell, deposit commissions, or any other basis. For information, see the instructions later for box 2. For the box 1099 NEC or box 7, Form 1099 miscellaneous. Form 1099 NEC was resized. We have reduced the height of the form so it can accommodate 3 forms on a page, which is great if you're printing on plain white paper and you didn't already purchase a whole bunch of envelopes that they're printed 2 forms on a page. I know I've talked to a lot of people who, because when they reintroduced the Form 1099 NEC and it was 2 up, they purchased a bunch of envelopes because, you know, the more envelopes you buy, the cheaper they get, right? Well, now that the 1099 NEC is 3 up, the 2 up pages, the 2 up envelopes don't work anymore. So people are getting creative this year because there's an abundance of the wrong size of envelope. Electronic filing of forms. The Taxpayer First Act of 2019, enacted July 1st, 2019, authorized the Department of the Treasury and the IRS to issue regulations that reduce the 250 return requirement for 2021 tax returns. If those regulations are issued and effective for 2021, the tax returns are required to be filed in 2022. We will post an article at irs.gov explaining the change. Reminders, general instructions. In addition to these specific instructions, you should also use the 2021 general instructions for certain information returns. Those general instructions include information about the following topics: who must file, when and where to file, electronic reporting, corrected and voided returns, statements to recipients, taxpayer identification numbers, backup withholdings, penalties, and the definitions of terms applicable for the purpose of Chapter 4 in the Internal Revenue Code that are referenced in these instructions and other general topics. You can get the general instructions. I'll post the link below in this video for the general instructions for certain informational returns at the irs.gov 1099 general instructions. Online fillable copies. To ease statement furnishing requirements, copies B, C, 1, and 2 have been made fillable online in a PDF format at irs.gov form 1099 miscellaneous and irs.gov/form 1099 NEC. You can complete these copies online for furnishing statements to recipients and for retaining for your own files. Filing dates. Section 6071C requires that you file Form 1099 NEC on or before January 31st, 2022, using either paper or electronic filing procedures. File Form 1099 MIS miscellaneous by February 28th, 2022 if you file on paper, or March 31st, 2022 if you file electronically. And folks, these filing dates is the exact reason why we now have a Form 1099 NEC and a Form 1099 miscellaneous. Prior to last year, when they reintroduced the retired 1099 NEC, box 7 of the 1099 miscellaneous, which is where we reported non-employee compensation, had a due date of January 31st of the following year, following the close of the tax period. And the entire rest of the Form 1099 miscellaneous was due February 28th if you filed by paper, or on March 31st if you filed electronically. And if you submitted even one Form 1099 miscellaneous with box 7 for non-employee compensation on, let's say, February 15th, if you filed one of those with a whole bunch of 1099 miscellaneous, say box 1 for rent, all of the box 1 for rent would be considered late, because the IRS only has the capability of having one due date per form. So in order to simplify things, they separated the non-employee compensation onto its own form and kept the rest on the 1099 miscellaneous. And so now each form has its own due date. So now if you send in a Form 1099 NEC with Form 1099 miscellaneous, even though you're mailing them all together, if you file it, on February 15th, only the NEC forms will be late, and the miscellaneous forms will be considered on time. And that is the biggest reason why we have the split. Specific instructions for Form 1099 miscellaneous. You file it for each person in the course of business to whom you have paid the following during the year: at least $10 in royalties, at least $600 in rents, prizes and awards, other income payments, generally the cash paid from a notional principal contract for an individual partnership or estate, fishing boat proceeds, medical and healthcare payments, crop insurance proceeds, gross proceeds paid to an attorney, Section 409A deferrals, non-qualified deferred compensation. And I think I read part of this already, but I'm just going to read it again just to make sure that it's covered. You may either file Form 1099 miscellaneous or Form 1099 NEC to report sales totaling $5,000 or more of consumer products to a person on a buy-sell deposit, commission, or other commission basis for resale. Caution: if you use Form 1099 NEC to report sales totaling $5,000 or more, then you are required to file the form by January 31st with the IRS, because that is the due date of the form. If you haven't, if you discover that you have somebody that you need to do the $5,000 or more of consumer products, and it's after January 31st, you have the option to file it on a Form 1099 miscellaneous. So I would definitely file it on the Form 1099 miscellaneous if it's not filed by January 31st. You must also file Form 1099 miscellaneous for each person for whom you have withheld any federal income tax, report in box 4 under the backup withholding rules, regardless of the amount of the payment. Be sure to report each payment in the proper box because the IRS uses the information to determine whether the recipient has properly reported the payment. Trade or business reporting only. Report on Form 1099 miscellaneous only when payments are made in the course of your trade or business. Personal payments are not reportable. You are engaged in a trade or business if you operate for gain or profit. However, nonprofit organizations are considered to be engaged in a trade or business and are subject to the reporting requirements. Other organizations subject to these reporting requirements include trusts of qualified pension or profit sharing plans of employers, certain organizations exempt from tax under the 501c3 or D, farmer cooperatives that are exempt from tax under Section 521, and widely held fixed investment trusts. Payments by federal, state, or local government agencies are also reportable. Reportable payments to corporations. The following payments made to corporations must generally be reported on Form 1099 miscellaneous. Cash payments for the purchase of fish or resale are reported in box 11. Medical and healthcare payments reported in box 6. Substitute payments in lieu of dividend or tax-exempt interest reported in box 8. Gross proceeds paid to an attorney reported in box 10. So payments to attorneys. The term attorney includes a law firm or other provider of legal services. Attorney's fees of $600 or more paid in the course of your trade or business are reportable in box 1 of Form 1099 NEC under Section 6041A1. Gross proceeds paid to an attorney under Section 6045F report in box 10 payments that 1 are made to an attorney in the course of your trade or business connected with legal services, but not for the attorney's services. For example, as a settlement agreement. 2, total $600 or more, and 3 are not reportable by you in box 1 of Form 1099 NEC. Generally, you are not required to report the claimant's attorney fees. For example, an insurance company pays a claimant attorney $100,000 to settle a claim. The insurance company reports the payment as gross proceeds of $100,000 in box 10. However, the insurance company does not have a reporting requirement for the claimant's attorney fees subsequently paid from these funds. The rules apply whether or not the legal services are provided to the payer. The attorney is the exclusive payee. For example, the attorney and the claimant's name are on one check, or other information returns are required for some or all of the payment under another section of the code, such as Section 6041. For example, a person who in the course of a trade or business pays $600 of taxable damages to a claimant by paying the amount to the claimant's attorney is required to furnish the Form 1099 miscellaneous to the claimant reporting damages pursuant to Section 6041, generally in box 3, and furnish Form 1099 miscellaneous to the claimant's attorney reporting gross proceeds paid pursuant to Section 6045F in box 10. For more examples and exceptions relating to the payments of attorneys, see Regulation Section 1.6045-5. However, these rules do not apply to wages paid to attorneys that are reportable on Form W-2 or to profits distributed by a partnership to its partners that are reportable on a Schedule K-1 Form 1095. Partner share of income deductions, credits, etc. Payments to corporations for legal services. The exemption from reporting payments made to corporations does not apply to payments for legal services. Therefore, you must report attorney fees in box 1 of Form 1099 NEC or gross proceeds in box 10 of Form 1099 miscellaneous as described earlier to corporations that provide legal services. This is, as far as I know, the only major exception to the only send 1099s to sole proprietors, single member LLCs, and partnerships who have not elected to be taxed as a corporation. Because normally, if you remember from our video on the W-9 instructions, where we talked about only, if a entity elected to be taxed as a corporation, then you would not have to send them a 1099. Attorneys are an exception to that rule. Taxpayer identification numbers. To report payments to an attorney on Form 1099 miscellaneous, you must obtain the attorney's TIN. You may use Form W-9, request a taxpayer identification number and certification to obtain the attorney's TIN. An attorney is required to promptly supply its TIN, whether it's a corporation or other entity, but the attorney is not required to certify its TIN. So a lot of attorneys, when they send out an invoice, just put their tax ID number on it because they know they're going to get a 1099 and it saves them a ton of time sending out W-9s. W-9s are required for all of your other subcontractors, though, because other subcontractors are required to certify that the tax ID number, address, everything is correct under penalty of perjury, and attorneys just have to supply the TIN. Deceased employee wages. When an employee dies during the year, you must report the accrued wages, vacation pay, and other compensation paid after the date of death. If you make the payment in the same year the employee died, you must withhold Social Security and Medicare taxes on the payment and report them only as Social Security and Medicare wages on the employee's Form W-2 to ensure the proper Social Security and Medicare credit is received. On the Form W-2, show the payment as Social Security wages in box 3 and Medicare wages and tips in box 5. And the Social Security and Medicare taxes withheld in boxes 4 and 6. Do not show the payment in box 1 of Form W-2. And I always say box 1 and 16 on a Form W-2 together because box 1 is federal. Box 1 is federal wages that are reportable as income, and box 16 is our state wages that are reportable as income. If you make the payment after the year of death, do not report it on a Form W-2 and do not withhold Social Security and Medicare taxes. Whether the payment is made in the year of death or after the year of death, you must also report the payment to the estate or beneficiary on Form 1099 miscellaneous. Report the payment in box 3 rather than as non-employee compensation. See the example that follows. Enter the name and TIN of the payment recipient in Form 1099 miscellaneous. For example, if the recipient is an individual beneficiary, enter the name and Social Security number of the individual. If the recipient is an estate, enter the name and employer identification number of the estate. The general backup withholding rules apply to this payment. Death benefits from non-qualified deferred compensation plans or Section 457 plans paid to the estate or beneficiary of a deceased employee are reportable on Form 1099 miscellaneous. Do not report these death benefits on Form 1099-R. However, if the benefits are from a qualified plan, report them on Form 1099-R. The instructions see the instructions for Form 1099-R and 5498. Example, Before employee A's death on June 15th, 2021, A was employed by employer X and received $10,000 in wages on which federal income tax of $1,500 was withheld. When A died, X owed A $2,000 in wages and $1,000 in accrued vacation pay. The total of $3,000 less the Social Security and Medicare taxes withheld was paid to A's estate on July 20th, 2021. Because X made the payment during the year of death, X must withhold Social Security and Medicare taxes on the $3,000 payment and must complete Form W-2 as followed. Box 1 and 16, $10,000, and does not include the $3,000 of accrued wages and vacation pay not paid before death. Box 2, $1,500 of the federal income taxes withheld. Box 3, $13,000, which is the $10,000 that was paid before death and the $3,000 of accrued wages and vacation pay paid after death. Box 4, $806, which is the Social Security tax withheld on $13,000. Box 5, like Box 3, is $13,000, which includes the $3,000 of accrued wages and vacation pay paid after death and the $10,000 paid before death. Box 6, $188.50, which is the Medicare tax withheld. Employer X must also complete a Form 1099 miscellaneous as follows. Boxes for the recipient's name, address, and TIN, the estate or beneficiary's name, address, and TIN. Box 3, $3,000. Even though amounts were withheld for Social Security and Medicare taxes, the gross amount is reported here. If employer X made the payment after the year of death, the $3,000 would not be subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes and would not be shown on Form W-2. However, the employer would still have to file a Form 1099 miscellaneous. Payments made on behalf of another person. For payments reportable under Section 6041, if you make a payment on behalf of another person who is the source of the funds, you may be responsible for filing Form 1099 miscellaneous. You are the payer for information reporting purposes if you perform management or oversight functions in connection with the payment or have a significant economic interest in the payment, such as a lien. For example, a bank that provides financing to a real estate developer for a construction project maintains an account from which it makes payments for services in connection with the project. The bank performs management and oversight functions over the payment and is responsible for filing information returns for payment $600 or more paid to contractors. For more information, see Regulation Section 1.604-1E. So I gave an example when this came up on the 1099 NEC instructions. A lot of times when you're dealing with real estate development clients and general contractors, the contractor or the developer are not going to have the cash available to pay for the entire project. So what they do is they get a construction loan, and plans have to be submitted, budgets, everything have to be submitted to the bank. The bank opens up a construction line of credit in which, when certain development stages are hit, the contractor or the property developer can submit a draw request, and the bank will then, verify that the construction objectives have been met and everything is going according to plan. And then the bank is required to send a 1099 to the subcontractors and not the construction or the development company. Indian gaming profits payable to tribal members. If you make payments to members of Indian tribes from the net revenues of Class 2 or Class 3 gaming activities conducted or licensed by the tribe, you must withhold federal income tax on such payments. File Form 1099 miscellaneous to report the payments and withholding to tribal members. Report the payments in Box 3 and the federal income tax withheld in Box 4. Publication 15A contains the necessary tables for withholding on distributions of Indian gaming profits to tribal members. State or local sales tax. If state or local sales taxes are imposed on the service provider and you as the buyer pay them to the service provider, report them on Form 1099 miscellaneous as part of the reportable payment. However, if sales taxes are imposed on you as the buyer and collected from you by the service provider, do not report the sales tax on Form 1099 miscellaneous. I'm going to cover the exceptions and the rest of the instructions tomorrow. So thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of Shannon Reads 1099 Instructions, and stay tuned for future instructions being read. Please like the video, make comments if you have any questions on there, and subscribe so that